Imagine a $300 billion empire vanishing into thin air without a single shot being fired. This isn't a high-stakes thriller movie. It is the greatest financial suicide in modern history. A titan that was once the steel and concrete heartbeat of the Chinese economic miracle has collapsed under the weight of its own shadows. Evergrande wasn't just a company. It was the mountain upon which an entire nation's middle-class dreams were built. It was a symbol of an unstoppable ascent, a testament to the idea that the sky was the limit for the Red Dragon. But how does a mountain dissolve overnight? How does the world's most valuable real estate developer become its most indebted ghost? Fasten your seatbelts and brace yourselves, because we are about to dive deep into the mechanics of how giants fall and why the echoes of this crash might be vibrating through the very walls around you. Even as you read this, in 2020, Evergrande was an absolute juggernaut, building entire cities single-handedly and managing a portfolio of projects worth hundreds of billions. It was the gold standard of the China speed philosophy. Yet, by 2023, that glory didn't just fade, it disintegrated into a pile of abandoned construction sites. The creator of vast urban utopias found itself unable to pay even the interest on its suffocating debt. We aren't looking at a simple corporate bankruptcy here. We are witnessing the step-by-step suicide of a titan that almost dragged the global economy into the abyss with it. To truly grasp the scale of this disaster, we have to look past the shiny glass facades and into the smoke-filled backrooms of China-esque growth strategy. For decades, the mandate from the top was simple: growth at any cost. In the Chinese economic model, the fastest way to inflate GDP and keep the gears of the nation turning was construction. There was an era of pouring endless rivers of concrete and erecting skyscrapers as fast as the cranes could move, regardless of whether there were people to fill them. Evergrande's founder, Yan, mastered this environment. He built a model that was hailed by investors as brilliant, but in reality, it was a ticking time bomb fueled entirely by reckless, unchecked debt. The mechanics were nothing short of predatory. Evergrande's strategy was a high-wire act of financial engineering. They would borrow billions from banks to buy massive plots of land from local governments, who were themselves addicted to the revenue from land sales. Then, they would sell apartments to the public before a single brick was even laid. This pre-sale system allowed the company to fill its coffers with the life savings of ordinary families before foundations were even dug. On paper, the cash flow was incredible, making Evergrande look like a money-printing machine. But the hidden trap was that instead of using that money to finish the buildings people had already paid for, Evergrande used it as a down payment for more land and to borrow even more money. They were essentially building a massive paper tiger, made of millions of unfinished apartments and empty promises. This worked for as long as it did because of a deep-seated cultural obsession. For a Chinese middle-class family, investing wasn't about volatile stocks or gold. Wealth meant real estate. Period. It was the only safe bet, with roughly 70% of household wealth tied to housing. Evergrande used this unshakable faith as high-octane fuel for its expansion. Over time, the firm morphed from a developer into something resembling a massive, state-sanctioned Ponzi scheme. They needed a constant influx of new money from new buyers to pay off old debts and keep stalled projects barely moving. But the ambition didn't stop at housing. Flush with borrowed success, they threw money at everything: electric vehicles that never hit the mass market, extravagant theme parks, and even a world-class football club. From the outside, the glitter was blinding. Inside, the debt had already reached the stratosphere, totaling $300 billion, a figure larger than the entire annual GDP of countries like Greece or Portugal. The turning point came in 2020. The world remembers that year for the pandemic, but for Evergrande, it was the year the oxygen was cut off. The Chinese government finally realized that this property bubble would level the entire country if it popped naturally, and introduced the Three Red Lines policy. This was a set of strict financial rules that limited how much developers could borrow. For Evergrande, which lived and breathed on debt, this was a death warrant. When the credit faucets dried up, the giants stopped breathing. Construction sites that once roared with activity fell into a graveyard silence overnight. The company couldn't pay its workers, its suppliers, or its international bond. The Lehman Brothers moment of the East had arrived. As the markets panicked, the government stepped in with what experts call a controlled demolition. They didn't save the company with a traditional bailout, but they didn't let it explode all at once either. Fearing social unrest, they broke it apart, piece by piece. Yet, This control couldn't hide the tragedy on the ground. Today, the Chinese landscape is littered with ghost cities, skeletal skyscrapers without windows, frozen in time like monuments to greed. Millions of devastated families are left staring at piles of concrete that represent their evaporated life savings, realizing the safe investment was actually the biggest risk of all. Ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, was Evergrande just a local accident? Or is it a dark trailer for our collective global future? Everywhere you look today, from the empty office towers in New York to the skyrocketing housing prices in London and Sydney, you see the same symptoms. Inflated bubbles, over-leverage, and prices detached from reality. Evergrande taught the world a bitter, universal lesson. Any empire built on debt, illusions, and the promise of endless cheap money must eventually face the laws of gravity. When the needle finally finds the bubble, the pop is never quiet. So, what do you think? Are the walls around you true wealth? Or just another bubble waiting for its needle? Is your local market built on solid ground or paper tiger foundations? If this deep dive into the collapse of an empire gripped you, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think we are heading for a global repeat of this crisis? Do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation into the world's biggest financial mysteries. See you in the next one. And remember, in the world of high finance, if it looks too good to be true, it's probably made of cardboard and debt.